videos about crypto and blockchain, all that good stuff. And yes, I did in fact make a couple of marketing videos recently, live streams as it were. But, well, the good old network had a way of eating up those videos. Who knows why? Technology can be so technologious, and it can be so confounding and confusing. Well, not to me, but not that kind of stuff anyway. Anyway, so those are gone to the ether forever. And by that I don't mean to the Ethereum, I mean into the netherworld. They are lost to the void. And that's it. So now we have to move forward. Maybe I'll make those again at some point. Plenty of good content in those things. I'm sure I'll recapture them in some way. But it's one of those things where you have some great crystal ball moments, or not crystal ball moments, epiphanies, that's the word. We have some great epiphanies about how to communicate a certain thought that you've been communicating for years. And then you say it just so. And then of course it does not get recorded properly, or something happens to those recordings. But who knows, maybe the live streams will reappear. I've also seen that happens sometimes too. That you've got sometimes a live stream that apparently disappears, and then a day or two later reappears and becomes suddenly available again to publish. Not sure why that is, but that is the way it is. Anyway, so that is what's happened with those videos. But now on to the subject at hand. If you happen to still be here, talking about crypto and blockchain, Bitcoin and alts and all those wonderful things. If you will have noticed, the market did pretty much what we expected over the past traditional work week, Monday through Friday, and even yesterday on Saturday. It moved pretty much as expected, relatively flat. You know, you still had 1% or more movement on a bunch of coins, but relatively flat, considering how wonderful it's been this week for movements to the downside and the upside, you know, bouncing back and forth after the nice drop on Monday. And I say nice drop because, you know, if you're acquiring, then it's always nice to get more for cheaper, right? Or if you're shorting, it's always nice to, you know, take profits on a nice short like that. So, because, you know, we don't really care what the direction is, right? Certainly not as low time frame traders, that's for sure. As long-term investors, it's a different story. But as a low time frame trader, price is moot. All that matters is being on the correct side, on the winning side of the trade. That's really all that matters. So what do I want to talk to you guys about? I want to talk to you guys about the wealth transfer, which we see happening right now before our eyes, right? And I know I've mentioned it before. For those of you who haven't seen any of my videos, welcome, and you can certainly find videos about the topic of the wealth transfer. But we are seeing the wealth transfer happening at a great rate that is significant and very intentional. Right? There's a reason that there's now more than 1 million wallets that have 1 Bitcoin or more, and the other 250 million wallets or whatever, you know, don't have that much. And there's a reason that, you know, in society there's the 99%, and then there's the 1%, right? And then there's the 1% of the 1%. Well, if you have even, you know, 1 BTC or more, you're really in the top percent, very much, because there's only 21 million of them, and there's 8 billion people on the planet. So that means that the average person, I did this math some time ago, but the average person, who has an interest in having Bitcoin, is never going to be able to acquire more than 0.008 BTC. That's less than 1%. Like the average person will never get more than 0.008 BTC. And I'm talking about full market saturation of like a couple billion people on the planet actually using it. Right? And people say, well, that's not full saturation. Full saturation is if everybody uses it. Be realistic here. We're not ever going to live in a world where literally everyone is using that. Okay? Why not? Well, why not? It's for a lot of reasons. First of all, right, it's not something, no technology is adopted by absolutely everyone. Even the smartphone you have in your pocket. There's different smartphones, right? There's different operating systems, there's different hardware, there's different manufacturers, there's different smartphones, right? They're not all the same smartphone. So people will use different cryptos and different fiats, and that will forever be the case. Don't get it twisted. Don't think that just because Bitcoin is amazing, which it is, right? Don't think that just because of that there will never be, the majority of people using it, and don't ever think that there will never be a situation where, all the other coins are gonna just, not just, like, there will always be competition, right? Because we are competitive by nature, so there will always be competition. There will always be other coins. There will always be other crypto projects. There will always be other innovative ways for people to manage their wealth. And if you think there won't, you have another thing coming, right? You've got to appreciate the fact that there's the diversity in that field is one of the things that helps it to continue to evolve, right? Like literally, you can say, well, no, Bitcoin maxi because I only, there is no second coin. There's no second. There's no other. Well, there is. There's millions of others. And while most of them may be scams, they're not. But while most of them may be cash grabs, that is arguable. There are plenty of other perfectly legitimate, good projects, right? Will any of them ever outgrow Bitcoin? Time will tell. My guess is at some point, yes. But in the meantime, no. Right now, they're not. Right now, Bitcoin is the top coin. But could it be 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 300 years from now? There will be a better system? Yeah, very likely there will be. But now we are at the beginning, relatively, of this amazing journey. And Bitcoin is now 15 years old, which is not a long time. 15 and a half years now since Bitcoin was basically released. And that is still a very new and relatively immature financial asset. Now, it's obviously the most mature crypto asset, but that's still very immature in the world of finance. So that is why this is still such a land grab, a gold rush, whatever you want to call it, a Bitcoin rush, because you can still get it for relatively cheap, right? Now, it's a lot more expensive now than it was 15 years ago, or 14 years ago, or 13 years ago, or 12 years ago, or 10 years ago, or even just 4 years ago, before it shot up from less than 10K to over 70, to 69K or whatever it was in 2021. And you say, well, it hasn't gone up since then, really. And it went up like, $3,000-$4,000 since then. And after falling again from like 69 down to like 15. Why should we care about this thing? It hasn't had another big boom. Maybe it's over. Well, if you really think that, consider why are the people with all the big bags collecting as much of it as they possibly can. And I don't mean the people with the big crypto bags, although they are too. I mean, why are people from traditional financial systems, old wealth, people who have intergenerational wealth, which is, by the way, extremely rare, right? Keep in mind, like, if you make money, if you generate wealth for your family, like if you become wealthy, not even rich, but actually wealthy, beyond rich, right? As I think it was, I forget who, but I think Chris Rock said, rich, basketball players are rich, and the guy that signs the check to pay his salary, he's wealthy, right? Something to that effect. Well, if you look at the top of the families that are wealthy, yes, they generally manage to keep their wealth over some generations. But if you look at families that are rich or even wealthy that are not at the very top, they most typically lose that fortune within like 2 generations after the generation that made the money. That statistically is just a fact. So if you're rich, your kids are likely to be rich for a while, and if they don't lose it, they'll have lost probably some of it, but if they don't lose it all, their kids will probably lose whatever's left. In other words, your grandkids will likely lose everything you make unless you become extremely wealthy and you manage your funds really well with smart wealth managers, etc. Unless you happen to have good values yourself and manage it well yourself and teach your kids and teach your grandkids how to manage it well. Right? Because that is a skill, and that is a very important skill, because that's the one way you can actually manage to keep your assets. Whereas if you assets, then you are just statistically like everybody. That's fine. Your family is likely to lose it all. I know that sucks to hear, but it's also true, right? It's statistically true that most people will lose their assets within a couple generations. And so that's why people view, Bitcoin as an intergenerational opportunity where you could actually generate enough wealth to last multiple generations. Especially if you're already one of these families that has a ton of money. But just as much as if you're a regular family that just has like a regular income, regular savings accounts, regular interest, accounts, regular stocks and bonds and 401k and all that kind of stuff. And you work for a company that has a pension fund and all that, the normal stuff. We call it normal, but it's really not normal. It's in fact very privileged compared to most people on the planet. Right? Most people on the planet don't have things like that. You might think they do, because you work in an industrialized world. But most of the world does not live in an industrialized world, right? They just don't. And even in the industrialized world, most people don't have stocks, right? Like in the U.S., 90% of people don't have stocks, right? It's supposed to be one of the wealthiest nations, etc., etc. In terms of big nations, it's by far the wealthiest. In terms of all nations per capita, it's certainly not the wealthiest, but politicians will lead you to believe that it is, but it's not. But in terms of large nations, it certainly is. And in terms of overall GDP and everything else, yeah, it certainly is. And even there, owning stocks, owning bonds, owning commodities, owning crypto is relatively rare. Right? Less than 10% of people own any stocks in the U.S. Which means the fact that maybe there may be more people in the U.S. that actually have crypto than have stocks, right? If more than 30 million people who own Bitcoin or any crypto live in the U.S., then that means more people in the U.S. actually own crypto than stocks. And most of them are relatively young demographics, like between 18 and 35. Most of them, not all, right? Clearly not all, since people who bought, the OGs of crypto are people who were buying this stuff 15 years ago. And so they're obviously not 18 to 35 for the most part, right? There were very, very, very few kids who were teenagers who were actually, and like young teenagers who were actually into getting Bitcoin back in 2009, right? I don't remember any people in that age range who were mining back in 2009. I'm sure there might have been, but again, I say might because I don't know that there were for sure, but there might have been. But in terms of actual like acquiring, I really don't. I can't think of any that were acquiring back then. Anyway, that is not the point. The point is that the transfer of wealth is a very real thing, and is certainly something that if you are looking at how to secure your financial future in the future, like now for the future, we are now looking at a time when you can still buy more than 1,000 Satoshis for $1. Right? It's around 1,500 or something like that. Well, 15 years ago, you could get 100 million Satoshis for $1. Now you can get 1,500. You see the difference? Right? It's a not insignificant difference, obviously. Right? You could get 100 million Satoshis for $1 as late as like 2011. At some point in 2011, you could still buy Bitcoin for less than $1 or $1. I think it was, anyway, up till around then. So for the first couple of years, really, you could buy it for less than $1. And I vividly remember people saying this thing's ever going to go to $1, which is hilarious because it's obviously worth more than $1 to people now. But yeah, you got to keep that in mind that it is very likely, especially over the long term as prices continue to rise, as they have been over the long term, that what we're seeing is what we're going to continue to see. Right? And that is, we are going to continue to see people who have significant wealth moving their wealth to secure it for the future in the form of crypto. It's not just going to magically happen overnight. Right? It's going to keep happening at a rate that we see it happening. And that rate will go up and down, ebb and flow on a regular basis. And that will be part of the volatility that we'll see. At the same time, for all the volatility that we see, we see that a lot of the purchasing, a lot of the selling and the buying is happening through accounts that have been around for many, many years relative to the space, right? They're held by wallets that have been around for a long time. And they're the ones selling to like the banks, etc. But of course, they're not selling at the market rates, right? Because they're willing to part with their coins that they've held for 15 years, and they've made, in some cases, billions of % profit on them. You know, their returns have been in the billions of %. So they don't necessarily need to sell any. And they know that there's a big demand by these buyers who have a lot of money to buy them. And they know that these guys who have a lot of money, like, have a ridiculously high amount of money. Right? They're all the banks and the extremely, extremely wealthy families. So they know that those people are willing to pay somewhat of a premium, especially as it lets them keep the price down relatively, like under 100 grand, or even under 80. You know, to them, anything under 80 is cheap. Anything under 100 is cheap. You know, 150 grand, 200 grand is cheap. So if they can get it for 60, 70, 80 grand a coin, you can bet they're paying that. And why? Well, because the banks want to own as much of this stuff as possible before they start to run it up again. And yes, they're definitely going to run it up again. You know, if you think that they're just going to run it up one time and let it sit at 70 grand forever, and then that's when they're going to make all their big purchases, well, you're wrong. Like, why would banks and every government institution and all the, everybody that has a ton of money has been buying like crazy over the past, 6 months, since the beginning of 2024. And by the way, they've been buying like crazy since before then too, but like now they're openly buying like crazy. It's a mad dash to see how much people can get. And the reason that they haven't bought all of it yet is because it takes time to move around significant quantities after you've deliberated for some time about what you want to put your money in. They don't only buy one coin. They don't only buy Bitcoin. They don't only buy Ethereum. They don't only buy whatever, right? They're buying all kinds of different coins. They're making all kinds of different investments because they know in the future there is a very high probability that a multiplicity of good projects, good coins, will actually exist and will do fairly well. And so they're placing their eggs not all in one basket, because that's what smart investors, people that are considered smart investors, typically do. The ones who have massive fortunes. Right? They're not managing 100 grand of assets. They're managing at least hundreds of millions, and that's if they're, families who have some money, who are wealthy to some degree, to billions and billions, right? Which is among the wealthiest family, the top wealthiest families. There's only some low number of thousands of billionaires in the world, individually as people, and then there's obviously companies that have billions of dollars, and those companies are also buying, the ones that are forward-looking and see into the future. But again, not all billionaires and not all millionaires are buying Bitcoin or other projects. And you think to yourself, well, why not? Aren't they tapped into the money thing? Yeah, they are. But a lot of them got into it too late. And they realize there's not enough Bitcoin to go around. So they can't get a whole one as much as they want. Right? You realize there's like 940,000 Bitcoin left. I think last week I was reporting on it, telling you there's like 970,000. It's already gone down like another 30. So there's like 940,000 Bitcoin left on exchanges. There's less than 10% of Ethereum left on exchanges because of the upcoming ETF that people are expecting. And so people are buying Ethereum like crazy. There's not very much of this stuff left in terms of available to buy. And what do you think is going to happen when the demand goes through the roof compared to the amount available? Right? It doesn't really matter how much demand there is. If there isn't any available, then any demand is extreme. Because there won't be any. So how are they going to get to have any if there's none left to buy? The only way is if they go and privately ask, hey, can I pay you some exorbitant rate? To which somebody who holds a bunch will probably say, sure. You know, take some of my crypto for 2x or 3x or 4x the actual price. Because there's none available anywhere and good luck finding it. So you'll pay me twice the price of what the market supposedly is. Because that's the only way you're going to get it from me. And guess what? People who have money to pay for that, they will pay for that. Happily. Because they will want that crypto. What makes me sure that they will want that crypto? Well, 15 years since Bitcoin launched, and the demand has kept going up. That's what makes me sure. You know, it doesn't take a genius. I just look at the history and I look at the facts. 15 years, the market's been going up. 15 years, there's been a demand. 15 years, there's been a supply. That supply is quickly running out on the top coins. That supply is not going to disappear because it's going to be in the hands of people or companies or wallets, whatever. And that supply is going to be highly sought after by people who can afford to buy it. So I highly recommend that you don't lose sight of the fact that this market is not just fluid, but it is rapidly evolving every single day. And every single day, there's less and less coins available. And I don't want you to miss out. I say you know, I don't know you personally maybe. Those of you who I do, hello. But the rest, I also don't want you to miss out. I want the average person to at least get what the average person will have, and even then some. Because this really is a financial revolution in many ways. But don't think that the moneyed people of today will not be the moneyed people of tomorrow. They will be. The smart ones will anyway. The ones who are now purchasing the future assets, or the assets of the future, the things that will be worth a lot of money in the future, are being bought at a rapid rate right now by the very same people that control most of the assets today. And if you're just sitting on it and you're watching the amount of Satoshis you can buy for every dollar dwindle year over year, you're missing a huge opportunity. Again, I remind you, 15 years ago you could get 100 million Satoshis for a dollar when Bitcoin was $1. In fact, you could get 100 million Satoshis for nothing in the first year, when it wasn't being traded on exchanges and it was just being bartered back and forth between miners. That's all you could do. You know, you couldn't buy and sell it on an exchange before there were exchanges. You could just trade it with people, or you could mine it yourself, and you get 50 of them at a time for nothing. And now, obviously, it has a much higher value and perceived value among people that, you know, buy and sell it and hold it, and by the market in general. And you can't get 100 million Satoshis per dollar anymore, or for free. Now you can get 1,500. And once the price starts to move up again, which if you look at the VEPs, it looks very clearly like that can happen, maybe even beginning, sometime in the summer, that we could see some kind of nice movement back to the upside after, a nice movement to the downside. We could see some very nice movement back up. Could even happen starting in July, and whatever, we'll see. I don't lose sleep over that, right? I trade low time frames, and I use the VEPs, so I'm not worried about it. But in the big picture, right, next year, I would doubt very much if the average price in 2025 will be 1,500 Satoshis per dollar. I would doubt it very, very much. I think it'll probably be fewer than that. It'll probably be closer to 1,300 or 1,200 or 1,000 or maybe less, right? But let's say if, 1,200, who knows? Right now it's 1,500. Next year it'll be maybe 1,200. Maybe the year after that it'll be, or a few years after that it might get down to 1,000. At some point it's going to get down to ridiculous numbers where it's going to be like 500 Satoshis for a dollar, 250 Satoshis for a dollar, 100 Satoshis for a dollar. And at some point in the distant future, it's entirely possible it might be 1 Satoshi for a dollar. It might even be less than 1 Satoshi for a dollar at some point after that. Maybe we won't be around for that. Maybe that'll be too many decades away from now for any of us here today to see that. But it is very probable that that could happen over the next 70, 80 years. Don't kid yourself. So, that's all I really got to say about that. For now, I hope you don't miss out on this really opportunity of a lifetime. It's like you're never going to see another opportunity like this in your life. Your kids aren't going to see another opportunity like this in their life. Your grandkids aren't going to see another opportunity. When I say opportunity, I mean a radical change in the financial system. You're never going to see something like this in the financial system ever again in your lifetime. Because this kind of thing, I say that obviously there's a probability for everything, but the probabilities are extremely high. You will not see something so radically different happen at such a rapid, pace in your lifetime. Even with the advancement of AI and everything, right? AI is not going to radically change the entire financial system. AI is going to do many things, and some AI crypto coins will also happen, and they already happened, and some will succeed and some will go away, and blah blah blah. There'll be no shortage of stories of wonderful projects, crappy projects, etc. But the change in the actual economic system of the world, how money moves the world and how money moves, around the world. What we're seeing right now is a real revolution, a significant upgrade of going from paper, coins, and electronic money to cryptographic currency, which is much more than just electronic money. It's much more than eCash. Yes, it is peer-to-peer, which is already more than just eCash, because eCash by itself is still centralized, but this is decentralized, at least for Bitcoin and Litecoin and other real decentralized coins. Right? It's a decentralized peer-to-peer electronic cash system, and it's more than just cash. A lot of it is perceived as a store of value. Cash isn't perceived as a store of value because cash has a falling purchasing power rate every year. A limited currency with a limited supply that only dwindles in circulating supply over time because people lose some of it here and there. That is not the same thing as cash. And it's immutable. Cash is not immutable. You might think it's immutable, but it's definitely not. Right? That's why they put ridges on coins, because coins are not immutable until you have security devices on them like those little ridges. And cash is obviously, paper money has been forged forever. You really can't forge a Bitcoin. You can make something kind of look like it, but if you know how to look at it right, You can't really forge it in the same way, with the same ease, and fool nearly as many people and actually use it to make purchases with that fiat system as you can with the, or that you can with that Bitcoin system or the Litecoin system as you can with fiat. Right? Like you can walk into a store with forged money and you might even not even know that you're holding forged money. The ATM might have given it to you. Right? That's happened to me more than once. I took money out of an ATM, gone to a store, the clerk says, "This is not real." I said, "What are you talking about? I just took it out of a bank ATM." They said, "Yeah, well, it's forged." And then they show you with their little UV pen or whatever, it's forged. And you ask yourself, well, how did I get in the bank ATM? Because the bank ATM let it slip through for some reason. By mistake or not by mistake. They shouldn't let it slip through if they're an honorable bank, but they might have made a mistake. So it's a lot easier to have forged money in a real banking, financial system where they're using fiat than in a real banking financial system where they're using crypto. Because in crypto, everything has to be validated by nodes and blockchains and all these kind of things. So, anyway, before I go off the deep end too much, I really just want to remind you that this is all happening. It is all very real. The opportunity is literally now. You don't miss out. Just because some idiot like me told you on the internet, hey, Bitcoin is going up in value, and you laughed it off, that doesn't mean you should miss out. Like, yeah, okay, maybe I'm just an idiot. But, I'm just some guy on the internet you never met, whatever. Doesn't matter. But if you're watching this video, and you're still watching it now, there's a very high likelihood you have some interest in this topic. And if you haven't already done the research, I encourage you to literally go read the Bitcoin white paper. It's available on the Bitcoin site. It's available in our Discord. I'll send it to you myself. Just leave a comment. I'll send you a link to it. But you can literally go to just the bitcoin.org website and read the white paper right there. It's a simple PDF. I even made a video where you can just listen to it. So read the Bitcoin white paper. Read other top projects, not documents. Don't spend years of your life reading silly nonsense on projects that are complete garbage. Start with the Bitcoin white paper. That's, for sure the one to start with if you don't know anything about it. Understand why people put a value on this thing at a low level, like meaning close to the technology. High level is like far away from the technology. At a low level, like the engineering level, why do people put a value on this thing? Why do miners put a value on this thing? Why do people who understand cryptography put a value on this thing? Beyond just the financial value. Right? The ability to send values back and forth without censorship, without a middleman, securely, portably, etc., etc. There's a reason this stuff is considered valuable, and there's a reason that intergenerational wealth may very well be formed by not just the smart money that are already intergenerationally wealthy, but by new people who understand this and who are doing everything they can to generate intergenerational wealth for themselves and their families and their children and grandchildren, etc. People are looking to build financial empires right now because that they see that they have a feeling they're going to need it more than before to survive. Which sounds crazy in a world where we have abundant resources. But those abundant resources keep getting more and more expensive under fiat. If you need $1 million to pay for your just cost of living in 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 100 years, whatever. Well, what if the average person only makes half of that or a quarter of that by then? Well, then what? Like, salary may have been getting better the last couple of years, but salaries for the past 50 years have not kept up with the rate of inflation and the rate of profits that companies have made. Meaning companies have not been paying their employees a fair amount for the past 50 years, which means, at least in my lifetime, pretty much since I'm born, or thereabouts, certainly my entire working life, and I started working as a young kid, but my entire working life, the rate of salary increase and the rate of how much companies are making has never been parallel. Salaries have always been far below the rate of profit increase. And even with the recent salary increases over the past number of years, again, that's only beginning to slightly make up the difference, which is still massive, and the rate of profits continues to increase. And the rate that salary increase has gone up has not actually matched the rate of greed, profits, that companies have been making even over the past several years. So yes, average rates have gone up in terms of salaries, but the average profits have gone up much more dramatically, especially when you consider how many companies have been literally squeezing profits out as much as they can for one simple reason. And they said it openly in many meetings with investors, etc. Right? They've been raising rates many times the actual rate of the cost of goods going up for one reason: because they can. And those are the people that have the biggest bags right now. The people that own those big companies and who are raising rates on their goods because they can. So if you want to actually be among the future of those people, not the ones who are ripping people off, but the ones who are holding big bags, I highly recommend learning about crypto. That's what I got to say about that. I highly recommend learning about it if you don't already have any. Learn about it, see why it's interesting, see why projects like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, even Solana, which is not decentralized. It's a venture-backed, centralized crypto, but it is arguably very good for a lot of reasons. I know a lot of people hate it, a lot of people love it, whatever. You read about it. I'm not telling you to invest in it, but read about it, learn about it, see what the difference is between that project and something like Ethereum or Litecoin or Bitcoin, right? Or BNB or whatever, XRP. All these coins in the top, 50, ADA, right? Cardano. Go learn about that. Why is it an interesting coin still now, despite the prices and everything else? Why should anybody be interested in Cardano, right? There's a whole lot of reasons why people should be learning about these things if they haven't already. Anyway, that's going to be it for now, folks. I know I babbled on for a while. So I hope you have a great day, and happy Bitcoining and stuff. Cheers.